Where is Peng Shuai, we've been asking. Well, what do you know? The Chinese dictatorship has suddenly made her appear during the Beijing Winter Games to tell us she's actually fine and we should stop mixing politics with sport, which is one of the dictatorship's watchwords. Don't confuse politics with sport. I tell you, the way the Chinese regime has hijacked the Winter Olympics for propaganda is sick. The head of the International Olympics Federation, I think, should quit in shame to give the dictatorship this platform. It started when China got a Uyghur athlete to light the Olympic flame at Friday's opening ceremony to make us think it didn't actually have up to 1 million other Muslim Uyghurs in concentration camps. And now it's produced Peng Shuai. Well, she's a Chinese tennis champion who won the doubles title at Wimbledon and the Paris Open, but she went missing in China for 2 weeks after she seemed to accuse one of China's top politicians, a former vice premier, of sexual assault in a social media post on China's version of Twitter. She said, "Why would you take me to your place and force me to have relations with you?" These are direct quotes translated. "Scared and panicked, and with the feelings I had for you 7 years ago, I agree. Yes, indeed, we had sex." Note the word force in that exchange. Well, within 30 minutes, that post disappeared. Any internet discussion of Peng in the Chinese social media was censored, and Peng herself disappeared as well. There was an international outcry with top tennis stars like Novak Djokovic asking, where is Peng Shuai? Well, since then, she has appeared only a handful of times, always with officials, and now being produced at the Beijing Games to tell a French journalist it's all a misunderstanding. She said, "I never said that anyone had sexually assaulted me in any way." She hadn't disappeared, she said. She couldn't now compete because of injury, so she'd retire. So you won't be seeing her outside China for a while. Now, and she said we could not play politics with sport, exactly what China wanted us to know. And by the way, a senior Chinese sports official was with her as she spoke. Joining me is Drew Pavlou, the human rights activist at Tennis Australia, tried a ban from the Australian Open for wearing a "Where is Peng Shuai" t-shirt. Drew, thank you so much for your time. Peng Shuai says it's all a misunderstanding. Do you believe her?
Look, Andrew, it's a very difficult thing because we know this interview she conducted with French media was not a free interview. So the French media have actually explained the process that took place to get to that interview. They had to submit pre-approved questions. The Chief of Staff of the Chinese Olympic Committee, he was present and he was translating her interview in Chinese to the French media. So if Peng Shuai is free, why does a Chinese government official have to be present at all these interviews? Why can't she speak without a Chinese government minder? And it's really concerning because the Chinese government is expecting us to all basically comply with this charade, and it's really a charade to sort of appease the conscience of the IOC staff. The IOC officials, they've got daughters, they've got wives, they've got female relatives who are no doubt saying, how can you keep up this spectacle? How can you hold the games in Beijing while Peng Shuai is not free, while she is being censored in China? They're no doubt under a lot of pressure from just friends and family who are asking them, how can you sleep at night doing this?
Drew Pavlou, this reminds me a bit of how Hitler allowed a Jewish fencer to compete at the 1936 Olympics in Nazi Berlin, which was really basically a kind of hostage in a way to cover up the fact, meanwhile, that he was persecuting Jews. Do you think it'd be the best test of whether we can believe that Peng Shuai is free and to say what she thinks is if we listen to her outside the country, away from an official? This seems to me a little bit like hostage diplomacy.
Yes, it very much is hostage diplomacy, and we know that there are Australians being held hostage by the Chinese government right now, like the innocent man Yang Henjun, who has been imprisoned for 3 years by the Chinese government for no reason other than the fact that he criticised the Chinese government from Australia. So we know that the Chinese government practices hostage diplomacy. They took those Canadian hostages when the Canadian government detained one of the chief executives at Huawei. We know the Chinese government plays hostage diplomacy all the time, and exactly right, as you say, we're almost in a situation akin to the 30s, I think, where we're having an Olympic Games being held in a country with 1 million people in concentration camps. That's the conservative estimate. Some of the estimates go as high as 3 million people. There have been reports in the BBC of systematic rape, gang rape being carried out against Uyghur women in these concentration camps. We know that there's a concerted effort by the Chinese government to lower the Uyghur birth rate through forced sterilizations, forced abortions. We know there's an attempt to destroy Uyghur culture. They've been bulldozing, cultural sites, mosques that are important to the Uyghur people. So it is very similar to a situation in like 30s Germany. You've got a fascist dictatorship here that has people in concentration camps, and yet the world is honouring them with an Olympic Games. And it's just shocking that so many people want to look the other way. It just makes you think that you're going crazy, because if you have Uyghur friends here in Australia, you know so many people who have lost family members to these camps, and yet you turn on Channel 7 and you see, the smiling athletes and the beautiful snow and the snowboarding. And it's almost like a form of gaslighting. You're supposed to go crazy because we know the reality of what's happening here: concentration camps, ethnic cleansing, systematic rape and torture being carried out against ethnic minorities as a weapon of war, basically, by the state. And yet they've presented this propaganda spectacle to the world to try and cover up.
Drew Pavlou, you're absolutely right to remind us that there are more people than Peng Shuai to worry about here. There's also Australian journalist Cheng Lei. She's in the Chinese jail after 18 months without trial on charges of spying, ludicrous charges, because she criticised some Chinese officials' handling of the virus pandemic. And of course, let's not forget the crushing of freedom in Hong Kong. Drew Pavlou, thank you so much for continuing to raise these issues in the public eye. Appreciate that. Thanks for your time.